Hello, I'm Padma Garjanan, and I'm an Enterprise Support Manager at AWS. I'm based out of Austin, Texas. Welcome to AWS Supports You, where we share best practices and troubleshooting tips from AWS Support. Joining me today is Aaron Edel from AWS. Can you give us a quick introduction, Aaron?
Yeah, hi everyone. Really glad to be here. I'm Aaron Edel from AWS. I run go-to-market for something called the Cloud Intelligence Dashboards, which is what the CID stands for on my thing, just in case you were wondering. So really looking forward to talking about it again.
Glad to have you here, Aaron. Everyone, today Aaron will be introducing you to a new cloud intelligence dashboard called the KPI, Key Performance Indicator and Modernization Dashboard. Before we get into the details, a quick note to our attendees online. Please use the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask your questions and share your thoughts throughout the episode. And also, tell us where you're joining from today. We look forward to hearing from you. Aaron, can you walk us through what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am just really excited about it because, as you know, with the Cloud Intelligence Dashboards, there's an S there. So there's several dashboards, and this one's new. And we really think that it's going to answer a lot of the questions customers have been asking us for a long time about their cloud financial management position and other insight and CFM information they need from their cost and usage data. So let's get into it and definitely have your questions ready. So start thinking of them now, start typing them now, because I might surprise you by jumping out and asking for some questions. So let's go over a little bit about what we're going to do today. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about cloud financial management and what does good look like, right? So cloud financial management, essentially, you're running on AWS, you have bills, you get bills from AWS, but how do you think about the value that you're getting out of AWS every hour of compute that you run, right? How does it interrelate with your business? So this is all cloud financial management, and that's a very short version of it. So we're going to dive into it a very little bit and kind of guide you towards the kinds of questions that customers have been asking us that have led to this new dashboard. And we're going to talk about some of those use cases that have led to this new dashboard. We're going to do a quick refresher on what the cloud intelligence dashboards are in general, which is the cloud intelligence dashboards is a sort of umbrella term that we use to encompass the team and the framework and the series of dashboards themselves. And then we're going to do a demo of this new dashboard, and it's going to be pretty exciting. So what does good look like? You're running on AWS. How do you know how well you're doing? Where do you go to get the answer? Am I doing okay? Am I doing poorly? Do I need to do better? This is a bit of an oversimplification, but in truth, if you were to aggregate and culminate all of your usage and cost information into one graph, this would probably be the most useful for you. In the yellow here, what you're seeing is your unit cost, right? So your cost per transaction. Let's take an example, compute. Your average cost per hour of compute. What is it? Do you know what it is? Do you know what it is on-prem? Do you know what it is in the cloud? Now, if you were to, when customers ask me, if you were to ask me, how do I spend less on AWS? How do I lower my bill? The first answer is just use it less. But that's not the right answer because it's not really the right question. The right question is, how do I get more value out of AWS? Because you're growing on AWS. You're using it more and more because you're modernizing, you're expanding, you've got more customers, you need to support more use cases, more workloads. So as your usage of AWS goes up, your unit cost should start to kind of make its way down. And that's not necessarily your overall cost, it's your unit cost. So again, with the compute example, your per hour of compute. So how do you do that? Well, there's actually a lot of different ways to do that. I am not going to cover all of these different ways to do that today. There are a lot of different ways you can tackle getting your cloud financial management in order, getting that unit cost to go down while your usage goes up. I am going to highlight a few of the really key ones that the dashboard is going to highlight as well. So first and foremost, if you're on premises and you're lifting and shifting, you're going to be kind of at the opposite end of this graph, right? You're going to have very unoptimized usage. Now, you don't have to do these in order, But some of the things that you might want to look at are right-sizing your instances, right? Making sure that you've picked the instances that are not, you don't just have resources running for no reason. You also don't have the opposite problem where resources that are 100% all the time and your app is slow or getting delayed. So you want to improve your elasticity. You want to make sure that your cloud deployment, your AWS deployment can respond to the needs. And you want to be able to forecast, right? So you need to be able to know what are the patterns and what were the patterns in the past and how are they changing over time, so I can look into the future and figure out what I need to do. The dashboard I'm going to show you today is going to talk to you about the kinds of things that I've put in little dotted, dashed squares here. So choosing the correct pricing model, that's a big one. So obviously there's on demand. On demand is the basic public, this is what you pay per hour based on your usage. It's great. There are other pricing models. So if you know, for example, that you're going to use a certain amount of compute all the time, you might want to look into reserved instances, savings plans. If you know your workloads are going to spike, you might want to look into Spot. There's a lot of different pricing models that you can choose from. You can optimize your storage. You can adopt serverless. I don't know how many of you know what serverless is. I remember the first time I heard the phrase serverless, and I was like, what do you mean, how can you not have a server? That doesn't make any sense. Another phrase I like is function as a service. So essentially, making things run in a more optimized way, just running the code you need and with its own dependencies. And that kind of talks to containers as well. So modernizing, right? Looking at managed services. So, we have these operations and services that you can run on AWS, like OpenSearch, that are managed, and they just end up having a much better optimization posture. So adopting those kinds of things can really help. Do you ever get to true AWS optimized? I don't know. I like to think of some things like, an A+. You just can't ever get an A+, maybe. But maybe you can. And I think that the point really is the journey. If you're headed in the right direction, month over month, year over year, quarter over quarter, then you're doing the right thing, and you are getting to a place that what good looks like. And so these dashboards are really going to help with that. So let's talk a little bit about some more specific customer use cases. And these are questions that we got asked a lot. So, a little background, when we were doing the demo, when I demo the cloud intelligence dashboards, which we have 4 of right now that are publicly available, you can download them and install them, and I'll talk about that. But customers would ask me some of these questions, and we realized that there was a middle ground here that we needed to cover with a new dashboard. So, for example, I'm a big organization. I have several lines of businesses. How do I track their adoption of Spot and Graviton and GP3 and other optimized services of containers, right? So, it's really important, I think, if you're building a cloud center of excellence and you have lots of different lines of business, lots of different business units, lots of internal organizations, and maybe lots of customers as well, you need to be able to track your recommendations to those lines of business and make sure that they're staying on point, make sure that they're actually adopting them, make sure they're trending in the right directions. If you can get your entire organization to agree on adopting these cost optimization measures, which is not easy, but if you can do it, you're in a really good place, because then you've got everyone steering the ship towards that other side of the graph where usage is increasing and unit costs are going down, and you're being more optimized. So it's about empowering the Cloud Center of Excellence to do that. How do they make the recommendations? How do they track that those recommendations are actually being used, and what's the impact, right? How do I know the impact of these choices I've made on my business? And how do I make the decisions about the future based on what's happened in the past? So let's talk about a little bit of a refresher here on the Cloud Intelligence Dashboard framework. So a lot of you may be familiar with this. The Cloud Intelligence Dashboards are a series of quick site templates with some backend stuff, right? So it starts with your cost and usage report. And in the case of our Trusted Advisor dashboard, your Trusted Advisor report. And then on top of that, when you deploy, by the way, it's quite easy to deploy now. There's a CloudFormation template that you can run, and it just spins up all of this stuff. There's also a new command line interface that you can run as well in Cloud Shell. which is awesome. If you're kind of a nerd like me, you find that kind of stuff awesome, and it is awesome. You can just type in a command and it just deploys it all. So what's being deployed? Well, there's a little bit of Athena going on. There's a glue crawler. And then, of course, you have your cost and usage report and your trusted advisor report in S3. Then what we do is we have these pre-baked SQL queries that are run in Athena on top of this data, and they present it all to Amazon QuickSight, where we have pre-baked templates. Now, if you've seen some of my other demos before, I've walked through these templates. We have lots of demos and videos and things online that you can see. And happy to do that for you individually as well on a customer one-to-one basis. But these templates come pre-baked with visuals that are useful for customers right out of the box. So if you kind of look at it from a high level, what you'll see is that all of these dashboards are really easy to use. They talk in plain languages. They're designed for your finance team, for your cloud operations team, for your IT managers. They're designed in some cases for people who don't know what serverless is, but they need to understand the unit cost of compute. They're secure. They run in your account. You host them. They're yours, essentially. There's no agents running anywhere. It's all completely AWS native services. They're very in-depth. So between all four of the dashboards, we cover a lot of really high-level metrics and insights and a lot of really in-depth granular insights and metrics as well. So you can get very granular with certain things. They are cost efficient. So QuickSight licenses is pretty much the bulk of what you pay. They start, I think, at $18 a month. I think roughly $24 a month is normal if you're going month to month. We have customers who spend a great deal on AWS in 7 or 8 figures per month. And just to kind of give you a size, to give you an indication of the size of the cost and usage data they generate, right? So in general, the more you spend, the more data you generate. It's not always the case, but all of this whole framework, the whole stack, $50 a month, $100 a month max. It's just basically Glue and Athena usage with your QuickSight license pricing. So it just becomes a drop in the bucket, and in some cases, a rounding error. So it's really cost efficient for a lot of customers. Like I mentioned, I've tried to, in this graph here, show you like little snippets of some of the dashboards. There's just a lot of visuals, a lot of deep diving that you can do, and a lot of high level understanding that you can do as well. So how do I position these dashboards, right? Like I mentioned, we've got 4 dashboards, and I'm introducing and showing you the new one, the 5th one today. On the left, you have the trends and the cost intelligence dashboards. And on the right, Kudos and the Trusted Advisor Organizational View dashboards. And I kind of like to think of the middle being the new dashboard we're showing you, the KPI dashboard, right? So it's a true FinOps dashboard. FinOps being a term that is new to me as well. And I kind of imagine it as essentially if you were to draw a Venn diagram where one circle is DevOps and the other circle is your finance organization, your CFO line, where they merge is going to be the FinOps, right? And there's probably better, if you go to FinOps Foundation, there's probably better descriptions of what FinOps is than what I've just ad-libbed. But essentially, what I'm trying to get at is that there are dashboards for every part of the business. So the folks who really need to get resource level granularity, figure out which resources are underutilized, how much it's costing you, dive deep into the data transfer costs and understand how much it's costing, when and where, and where data is going and where it's going to, and get that really resource level granularity. The Kudos dashboard and the Trusted Advisor Organizational View dashboard is for you. If you're a CFO, if you're in the CFO line of business, you're trying to get that super high level metric, or even really just mid-level metrics about what's the return on my investment in terms of using RIs and savings plans? How much did I save using Spot? Because I want to adopt more Spot, but I don't know how much I saved. The cost intelligence dashboard and the trends dashboard are going to really help you with that. So I think what I'm going to do is, before I jump into the live demo here of the new KPI and Modernization Dashboard, I am going to pause and check in with Padma and see if there was any questions so far.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you for that walkthrough. We do have a few questions. And our first question comes from our user, EEE Jua. The question is, Can the dashboard be deployed on a per account basis or a multi-account basis?
Yes. So typically, what happens? So there's two scenarios. Well, the answer to the question is yes to both, actually. But essentially, what you want to do is deploy it. Most customers will have one payer account. I shouldn't even say most customers. Some customers have one payer account. Others will have multiple payer accounts. And a payer account usually has linked accounts associated with it. So you might have a payer account and then 300 linked accounts. What you'll want to do is deploy the dashboard at the highest possible level. In fact, you want to deploy all the dashboards at the highest possible level, and they can be deployed across multiple payers. And then, of course, if you want to do it per account, there's actually capabilities within QuickSight to say, okay, well, what I really want to do is I want to create, line of business A, right? Line of business A is linked accounts 1 through 10. And maybe it's also linked accounts 7 through 9 from a different payer account, right? It can get complicated. The cool thing is that with the dashboards, you can just say, I just want this dashboard to just be that line of business. And I want the director or the leader of that line of business to have access to only that amount of information from those accounts. All of that's possible with some tooling in QuickSight, like row-level security, which lets you really get very granular at high levels with dashboards meting out access, but it also supports SSO and IAM. So I think the real key here is that you don't have to have an AWS console access to use these dashboards. And that's by design. So you can force it so that you do have to, but what's really good is that oftentimes your CFO and your director of finance and the people who are really needing some of this information, they don't have console access. They don't need it. They don't know what GP3 is. They don't need to know. But they can still get these dashboards and they can still get that high level insight.
Got it. Thanks, Aaron.
Sure.
So we have one more question that just popped in from user Juan Ramon 357. Thank you and welcome for the question. Welcome, Juan Ramon. So the question is about dashboard customization with third-party data sources. Does the dashboard support third-party data sources? Can you talk about that?
Yes. So when you first deploy the dashboards, particularly with the automation, it is based on your cost and usage report. And if you're using the Trusted Advisor dashboard, on your Trusted Advisor report, those two sources of data. However, it's actually very, very easy to add more data. So it becomes a larger question. But at the simplest form, let's say you've got a mapping table of line of business, cost center, and then it's mapped to accounts. You can upload that as a CSV right into QuickSight, right into the dashboard, and start slicing and dicing your visuals by cost center, by line of business. On the kind of more complicated end, we actually have, so a lot of customers ask us, okay, well, what about AWS budgets? What about compute optimizer data? What about data from on-prem? And the answer is yes, all of that is supported because we support all third-party data in QuickSight. We actually have a well-architected lab, which there should be a link for that we'll send out at some point. That is, we call it oh gosh, I forget what it's called. It's something like the customized aggregate or collection of data. I'm totally butchering the name of the lab, and I apologize for Steph Gooch who wrote it. But essentially, what it'll let you do is it actually is maybe 2 or 3 CloudFormation templates. All you have to do is run them, and then it'll start aggregating into a new data lake, basically an S3 bucket, your compute optimizer data, your AWS budgets data, your EC2 instance information. It pulls, it has modules for all of these different services, pulls them all into one place. And then it's really easy to just start adding to, get them into QuickSight and start adding visuals. So the long answer to Mon Ramon's question is that yes, it supports third-party data sources, and there's lots of different ways you can tackle that.
Got it. That's useful. Thanks, Aaron. And also today we have our audience joining from across time zones. So we have JibJab06 joining us from Boston. Welcome to the show, JibJab06. Ben Techie22 from San Francisco. And then we have Tiger027 from East Africa. Thank you all for joining us. And feel free to ask us questions, and Aaron will address them on our next question break. Back to you, Aaron.
Yeah, my pleasure. That's really cool. I got to spend a lot of time in Tanzania and near Dar es Salaam I also lived in Boston and San Francisco. So a lot of people close to my heart. Really, really cool to see that. All right, so let us now dive into a demo. And I think that this is really going to open it up for you guys. This is going to make it really clear what I'm talking about with this new dashboard. Because essentially, when you deploy this dashboard, this, what you'll see is what you'll get right out of the box. Actually, what you're seeing right now is a sneak preview of the upcoming dashboard. It's not yet released. So I know I'm getting you all excited. Definitely stay tuned for the release, and it's probably gonna look a little bit different. It's gonna definitely have some even more stuff associated with it that you'll be able to get when you deploy it. But the basics here are the KPI tracker, right? So let's just break it down to the very basic core issue here. How do I track my goals? How do I even set goals, right? And what should the goals be? Where am I getting started? So the KPI tracker here, these goals that you see right here, you can set these. We also have it pre-baked with some recommendations. So for example, we have a EC2 previous generation recommendation of 10%, right? You should have 10% or less of your compute spend should be on previous generation instances. It gets a little more complicated when you're talking about Spot, because that's where you really need to set these goals. Because what is a good Spot recommendation? It's totally going to depend on your workloads and your use case and how you use AWS. Graviton is awesome. You should use Graviton as much as you possibly can, and you definitely want to think about. And we're going to talk a lot about Graviton today in these dashboards. You definitely want to think about, how can I set a goal organization-wide per line of business, per account, per team of adopting Graviton, and other other things like GP3, making sure your EBS snapshots aren't hanging around forever. You want to make sure that's low. Your S3 storage tiers, and then of course with your managed services, are you using Graviton where appropriate? Now, here's the real cool part, right? So let's say you've started to adopt some of these things. How do you track it over time? So this graph here, this table here is going to show you, for example, you were 3%, you were at 53% for Spot in September, right? And maybe it's down or from the previous month, or perhaps you're staying flat, right, with your Graviton adoption. This will essentially let you track over the last 3 months, and you can adjust the time period, what your adoption of these services or these goals are and how you're tracking. And then you can adjust them on the fly if you need to. So if you're at 10% for Spot, you decide you've passed it, maybe you want to change that percentage. Okay, so here's the real question on people's mind, right? What do I get if I meet these goals, right? So this part of the graph, I think, is or part of this dashboard is really key, because if you set these goals, we can give you an estimated savings. We estimate that if you meet your goal, you're going to save $5,000 a month on Spot, or you're going to save $335,000 a month on Graviton. We can tell you in total over the period of time. We can tell you on a month-to-month basis. So this becomes a very good place to start. Now, these are not necessarily meant to be pinpoint, perfect, accurate assessments of how much you're going to save. These are estimations based on your past usage, based on what we know and the pricing to be for certain things. Like we know what the pricing is for Graviton. We also know how it compares to public on-demand pricing. So these are things that we can compare and tell you, but these are estimates. And really the point here is to give you and your team something to start with, right? How do I jump to a place where we can actually have this conversation about adopting Graviton, for example, and budgeting for it and preparing for it? And then how do I set a goal? How do I track the goal? And what's the impact of meeting the goal? So, I kind of went through that pretty quickly, but Padma, were there any questions during that first chunk? Because what I'm going to do next is jump to the rest of the dashboard, which really dives deeper on Graviton. So were there any questions about the KPIs or any of that part of the demo?
I don't see any questions about the demo so far. Everyone, please post your questions. Aaron will take these for you. We have some more demo to run through, and a question break coming up at that time, if you want us to address it then. So, Aaron, I do have a question for you. Tagging comes to mind when you talk about costs. Uh,
Yes.
can I incorporate the AWS tags into the dashboards?
Absolutely. So it's a really great question. Tags are a great way to, for example, tag workloads, or a business unit, or assign line of business, or a cost center. There's a lot of different use cases for tags as it relates to cost and usage. The good news is that all of that data, all the tagging, is in the cost and usage report, which is what the dashboards are based on. So although we don't know your tags ahead of time, so we can't pre-bake it when you first deploy it, we've got actually a great 5-minute video. It takes literally 5 minutes to add your tags. It's very easy. You pop into Athena, you just add the tags, and then hit the go button. Essentially, everything should refresh on the background, and your tags will then be in your dashboard. And what's neat is that I didn't really mention this before, but these dashboards, they're not meant to be the end. They're actually meant to be the beginning. A lot of customers really want to build their own CFM tool set, right from scratch. And instead, let's get you 90% of the way there in 20 minutes, because that's how long it takes to deploy these dashboards, give or take. Let's get you 95% of the way there. Then you can jump off from that point, and you can start customizing, and you can start adding visuals. And when you incorporate your tags, that's kind of the first step, right? You're customizing your dashboard a bit. And now you start thinking, oh, well, what if we, what else can I learn from this data? And that's the kind of beauty of QuickSight, is that you have the option of really exploring your data, because it's not QuickSight's not a complicated tool to use. And I have to also take a moment and say, a big shout out to Yash Bindlish, Yuri Prihochke, Timur Tilyaganov, and Ali Whitman, who invented these dashboards essentially and built this from scratch. And so hopefully they're watching, and if you ever meet them, buy them a coffee or something, and give them a round of applause, because a lot of work went into these dashboards, and they're really kind of making big waves for customers.
Great. Looks like a great framework to get started with. Sets you on the right path, and then you can ask all the business logic questions and incorporate them. And seems like a really useful tool. That's good. So that's all the questions I'm currently seeing. I do want to say hi to Mondra1357, who's joining us from London today. Welcome.
Oh, fun. I love London. One of my favorite places. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these modernization insights. So this is the sort of second half of this dashboard here. Now, first and foremost, we try to use plain language wherever we can. We want to make sure that everything's very clear. We're always updating and improving as well. So, when you get these dashboards, when you get your hands on these dashboards, definitely give us feedback. But essentially what we want to be able to do here is say, okay, let's break down some of the modernization potential savings here, right? Let's make some assumptions. Graviton can save you up to 20%. And you can do 10% savings with AMD instances. So looking at you're always going to have these advanced options. So if you want to exclude things like savings plans or reserved instances, it might help you when you're doing your strategizing as well, depending on your situation. But let's look at your distribution of compute spend, for example, last month, right? This is how much you spent. This is how much of it was on Graviton. This is how much was on AMD and Intel. Now, what was your year-over-year potential savings going from Intel to Graviton? We can tell you that, right? So this is a great place to start, especially if you're trying to budget the work to move to Graviton or to AMD. We can break it down by month. So what's your month-over-month potential, modernization savings adopting these new instance types, these new CPUs? We can give you, more monthly detail here about the current total compute generation. So this is a good trend. Are you going up? Are you going down? Again, we like to highlight the efficiency assumptions that we make. Now, this cost efficiency over Intel graph, this is going to be able to tell you how much you did save. So let's say you did adopt Graviton, or you're in the process of doing it month over month. We can tell you how much you saved compared to public on-demand Intel pricing, right? So this is really great if you had to make a use case to your boss or something to get this work done. You can actually come back with real data and say this was the return on the investment. Now, the rest of these graphs get pretty granular, and so you might want to say, okay, I just want to know I just want to filter the rest of this by Graviton 2 or by Intel or by AMD, or I want to look at all of it, right? You have these options with some of these controls. Now, your day over day running costs for the last 90 days, this is going to help you think about, okay, well, let's say I did adopt Graviton, what was the pattern? What was the usage pattern? Or, maybe I'm looking for more opportunities to adopt savings plans. I can exclude or include those things. I want to know what was the average. So again, here's the unit cost sneaking in again. And this looks a little weird because this is demo data. So it's not real data. So it kind of gets funky when you're not looking at real data. But this blue line is my unit cost of compute. So, when you run this on your data, what you're going to see is you adopt Graviton, as you adopt savings plans, as you adopt Spot, your unit costs are going to go down, even though your usage of compute is going to go up. So this graph is really going to highlight that for you and make it very clear. You're on the trend to what good looks like, and so you can get very granular with this data on this graph. Okay, so let's skip ahead a little bit because we're cutting short on time. So if we think about looking for opportunities, right, for let's say Graviton 2 adoption, maybe what we want to do is look for the workloads that are possible. Now, again, this isn't perfect, right? We make some assumptions here, but essentially we know, and we leave this here for your choice because this will change, but we know what instance types and what instance family groups are good for migration to the Graviton version. Now, we can tell you the top 10 accounts. So you can look at the top 10 accounts in terms of spend and pick, I want to start with this account. It's just the most expensive right now for compute. Or if you want to do it by instance type. So of all the possible, workloads, this is your month over month spend by instance type. And then if you really want to drill down here, this is kind of cool. You can actually cut and paste your instance ID into this little field here, and it'll filter these graphs. And what these graphs will give you is some very detailed deep dive into your day over day costs. And you can break it down by instance type. You can break it down by usage type as well, which is really useful as well. So you can get that detail on a per instance, per resource level. Okay, so let's look at databases, right? Because you can use Graviton 2 for databases. You could we have services like OpenSearch, right? For example, that you can actually use or with or Fargate, or not Fargate, sorry, Lambda, that you can use with Graviton 2. So we like to first, again, show you the assumptions that we make based on real data that we know about past savings. Here's your past usage. Here's how much you could save year over year if you were to adopt Graviton, right? And we can show you the month over month potential modernization savings if you were to adopt Graviton. And we can show you things like, all right, for the database services, what were the month over month costs? What was my unit cost? What was the total cost? And again, this is great for highlighting those workloads, those use cases, those resources that are going to be really good candidates for migration, because it depends on your organization, right? It's going to depend on whether you're looking at instance types, you're looking at workloads, or you're looking at accounts, looking at tags. Even you need to be able to slice and dice this data in lots of different dimensions. Again, so we have some assumptions here about the cost efficiency over Intel in terms of what you've done in the past. So let's say you have actually switched to Graviton. You can look per service, per month, per account, what your past savings was, right? So this is really useful because if you know your past savings, you can project your future savings and you can budget the work, right? Now, let's be honest, migrating from Intel to Graviton 2 can take some work. There's some, dependencies that might not work. You might need to swap out. So if you're trying to budget that work, you need to know, well, what's the potential return on my investment? And that's what these dashboards and these visuals can really help you figure out. And then when you set those goals, they can be real goals and they can be based on real numbers. So I think we are about out of time for the demo. So what I'm going to do, I think, is stop here. And we've got about 15 minutes left, give or take, I believe, Padma, right? So I think it'd probably be more fun if we spend the rest of the time just chatting and answering questions, because I'm sure people have some questions.
So I do have a question for you. And everyone, please post additional questions here. We'll stay for another 5 minutes or so, and until we can answer questions for you. So a question from about documentation and dashboard. This question comes from Kapoor Hem. I did share the links on the documentation, which the blog post, as well as the well-architected labs. But can you expand a little bit more on where can I find documentation on this dashboard?
Yes. So the first place you're going to want to go is the well-architected labs, because the well-architected labs are first and foremost very thorough, and they walk you through every step. And in fact, so I mentioned that you can deploy these dashboards in 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes using either CloudFormation or using our CLI tool. You can also deploy them manually. So we will, in the labs, walk you through, if you want to, doing it manually. And customers do want to, because they want to know how it works. They want to learn all of the detail behind the framework. And I think that's great, because the more you know, the more you understand about how it works behind the scenes, the more you can customize it and really advance it within your organization to make it useful. So the well-architected labs will have probably all, if not most, of the public documentation that we have. We also have some blog posts, which if you, I'm sure there's some links here that you're getting sent. We have a couple of blog posts, one that walks through the framework, the Cloud Intelligence Dashboard framework, and also walks you through the Kudos dashboard, which is the, I don't know if you remember from the beginning, the Kudos dashboard is the very granular, detailed dashboard that when you first open it, you're just like, wow, there's so much here. So we have a blog post that walks through that. And then we've got another blog post that's about the Cost Intelligence Dashboard, which is a higher level dashboard that's got some really great tools for looking at your unit cost, figuring out the return on the investment for savings plans. How much did you save using Spot? So these blog posts are really good resources. Now, we're always updating the well-architected lab. Always. And so I encourage customers to keep going back, have it bookmarked. We also have some YouTube videos, which we started doing because we get a lot of frequently asked questions, as you can imagine. So like your question, how do I add tags to my dashboard, right? So 5-minute video on how to do that. Another question is, how do I add, controls and filters so that I can, filter the whole dashboard? Or how do I do this? How do I do that? We try to answer them in 5-minute little chunks, little vignettes. So between the YouTube videos, the well-architected lab, and the blog posts, I think is most, if not all, of the documentation that we have. But like I said, we're just scratching the surface here. We're always improving. We're always including more content. And we love feedback. You'll find our email embedded everywhere in the dashboard and also in the well-architected labs. Reach out to us.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So another question from me, Aaron. So we have a few more minutes here. Oftentimes when I'm using these dashboards, I'm going to scale this out to my teams, right? And different teams have different responsibilities. Any best practices on how I can scale these dashboards to my teams?
Yes, absolutely. So this is another frequently asked question. And I think there are actually multiple answers to this one. Now, there is within, so these dashboards are all QuickSight templates, which means you're using QuickSight. Now, I didn't even do an intro on what QuickSight is. QuickSight is a service in the AWS console that's a BI service, and it's great. It's really easy to use. It's very straightforward. You can just import, your Athena tables. You can import your Redshift. You can import data from just about anywhere, and then start just building some visuals on it. So the templates that we give you are essentially that, but we've pre-built them. And so they get you value right away. We've done a lot of complex calculations. There's a lot of work in the SQL queries that run behind the scenes, but essentially they're QuickSight dashboards. And so a lot of the scale comes from some unique features to QuickSight. So for example, I think the best way to scale dashboards to your teams is something I mentioned earlier called row-level security. Now, what row-level security lets you do is apply a set of rules to the data set that powers the dashboard. So you can, for example, say, okay, here's a list of usernames, user IDs, and here is the account or accounts I want that user to be able to see. So it's simple. It's simple as that. It literally can be a CSV file of that, 2 columns, and you just upload it to the dashboard. There's in the data set editing window, there's literally a button that says something like row level security. Click it, upload the CSV file, hit apply, and then that's it. So now when a user logs in to the dashboard, they are restricted to only see data from those accounts. And it doesn't have to be accounts, it can be tags. Accounts is just the most common one. So when you want to scale it out to your teams, right? So some customers, they don't mind if everyone can see everything. They just don't, because you know what? Transparency actually can help when you're talking about cloud financial management. If you know team A, especially with this dashboard I just showed you, if they're 70% covered with spot and savings plans and Graviton, and you're 30%, man, you better, it can motivate you. So it really depends on how you want to manage it, but both are options. There's other ways to scale them too. So for example, you can embed these dashboards so that you can have a website that you hit first that's got links to the different versions of the dashboards that are filtered by different things. Or you can also just simply assign a dashboard to a user or set of users so that dashboard's pre-filtered to what they need to see. So there's, and because QuickSight supports SSO and supports IAM and supports these different, ways to log in and manage users, there's really a lot of different ways to scale it out. But row level security, I think, is probably the best practice because it reduces a lot of the upfront work you need to do. And it also keeps everything kind of maintained in one place a little bit better. It's a little easier to maintain than having a bunch of different dashboards that are versioned based on who needs to see them. But you can do either.
Got it. And I'll post a link here shortly about row level security. And that's and I like the idea you talked about, within a business unit and across teams within a business unit. It's nice to share what other teams are doing and follow some of those best practices. Goes in line with what you were talking about, what good looks like. A lot of best practices that we can learn from each other that way. So thanks for sharing that. One more question here for you. So I see that these dashboards are a great way to get our insight, cost and usage data. But how can I add other data such as budgets, compute optimizers?
Yeah. So this is the next. Really, this is what I like about this question, is that it kind of takes the vector, the direction, the point of these dashboards and extends it into the future, because they are, in a sense, except for the trusted advisor dashboard, they're based all on the CUR, the cost and usage report, which has a lot of data. It's very granular, and we can tell you a lot of stuff based on the CUR, right? We can give you your unit costs. We can tell you how much you saved using Spot. We can tell you, what the return on the investment was using, with all the savings plans and RIs you purchased and all sorts of great stuff. But there's also a lot of, I call it CUR adjacent data, right? So cost and usage adjacent data that would be useful and helpful, and in some cases necessary, that isn't in the CUR. So we fully recognize and support this concept, because at the end of the day, what I want you to do as the go-to-market leader and sort of a member of the core team here from the Cloud Intelligence Dashboards is I want you to use it in a way that's useful, right? I want you to get value out of it. And that means in some cases, customizing it, extending it. So we want to support you doing that. So we have a new lab, and I butchered the name earlier, and I'm still going to butcher it because I didn't look it up between when I butchered it earlier and now. But we have a lab. It's a level 300 lab in the well-architected labs that is essentially a lab that helps you build, we call it a data lake essentially, right? Because the CUR is one file, sort of. We could be pedantic about whether it's a file or big data, whatever. But it's essentially one thing, right? One set of data. Compute optimizer is another set of data. Trusted advisor is another set of data. I mean, it is. And so already with what's released, you are dealing with two sets of data. So by the way, it's called the Optimization Data Collection Lab. And I did just look it up over here on my right. So for those of you who are trying to Google it, Steph Gooch, I'm sorry, again, she wrote the lab. I apologize for forgetting the name. It's the first day of the new year. It's like, come on, man. We were just on a break for 2 months and coming back and trying to remember everything. So it's called the Optimization Data Collection Lab. Now, what it does is through a series of CloudFormation templates is it actually pulls all of this additional data into a data lake, into your S3 bucket. So, and what's really cool, Padma, about it is that it's automatic. So you run this and then you don't ever have to think about it again. It will every month pull this refresh data, your trusted advisor data, your compute optimizer data, EC2 instance information, your Elastic Container Service information, your RDS services, your AWS organizations data, which, by the way, really critical for the account names, right? Which isn't in the cur. So if you want to slice and dice your visuals not by account IDs but by account names, you need your AWS organizations data and your budgets data. So let me kind of just highlight a few use cases here. So with budgets, so one use case that came up was a customer was in the process of migrating to AWS, and they had a budget for this migration. And so they wanted to overlay their budget, right, as a line on the graph, maybe like this, and then with their cost underneath. And so they can track whether they're over or under budget. Pretty simple use case. And AWS Budgets has a lot of really great features for alerting you, doing some forecasting and predicting, and you can kind of set, it's cool. You can say, increase my budget by X% every month, right? So that you don't have to do it manually. And so we can import that data. You can put it right onto your QuickSight dashboard, and you can see how your cost is trending against your data. Now, other use cases for some of this other data beyond AWS budgets. So aside from Trusted Advisor, by the way, I want to put that aside is because we do have a dedicated dashboard called the Trusted Advisor Organizational View, which takes the Trusted Advisor data and gives you all kinds of great insight, visualizes it, lets you track it over time. It's awesome for looking for underutilized and underutilized resources. How much is that costing me? How much will I save if I kill these resources or these instances? That's all there. Right off, all you have to do is run the lab and the script, and you have this dashboard. But this new lab, this 300, will help you first of all set up the automation so that the Trusted Advisor data is automatically pumped out every month, along with all this budgets data, compute optimizer data. And it's really neat. You can take your compute optimizer recommendations and just display them against your resources, and you can just have everything in one place. And one thing I didn't quite mention either, and this is sort of outside of the KPI dashboard, but in the cost intelligence dashboard, you can query your data in an ad hoc way, like you do with Cost Explorer. But with this dashboard, you have access to all of the accounts that you need to have access to, or some of the accounts that you need to have access to. And you can do multidimensional filtering. So if you need to know your cost by account and by region, and by service, it takes a couple seconds. You just click, just add those fields, and you've got a multidimensional cost explorer that you can use across a subset of accounts or across all your payer accounts, right? So there's a lot of, it's like being able to take Cost Explorer and moving it around in your organization and plopping it in different places. I digress a little bit, but pulling all of that data into a data lake is something we're very, very keen on helping customers solve. And by the way, the lab lets you also have custom modules. So if you had another source of data that you wanted to consider, for example, some kind of on-prem data, the holy grail here is if you can compare your on-prem unit costs to your AWS unit costs, right? Because then what you're doing is really comparing apples to apples in terms of how do I think about the return on the investment of using AWS, of using the cloud, and so that is within grasp with these dashboards. We haven't solved it ourselves yet, but it's within grasp with collecting this data, having a place that you can easily visualize it, think about it, and calculate it. So yeah, it was a long-winded answer, but essentially that lab will definitely get you started.
That was very useful, Aaron. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge today and all the guidance and walking us through all these tools. With that, everyone, today we looked at the new Cloud Intelligence Dashboard. And we talked about how you can scale and deploy these dashboards for your teams. If there are any questions that were not answered today, please post them on repost.aws and email us feedback to AWS Supports You at amazon.com. We want to hear from you and tell us what else you would like to see on this show. Thank you for joining us today at AWS Supports You, and happy cloud computing.